Well, I didn't have that on my bingo card. The Denver Broncos just make a very surprising move, and if Sean Payton is making this move, what other things does he have up his sleeves this entire offseason? Is going to be wild to watch as the Broncos go from squeaking into the playoffs or backing in, as the haters would say, to being a playoff contender. We're going to break down the news of the day, what it could mean going forward, the leaders in the clubhouse to replace the move, and so much more. If you're new to the channel, I'm a diehard Denver Broncos fan named Ben. Helps me in the YouTube algorithm out tremendously if you would smash that like and subscribe button. So the news of the day is definitely this, that the Denver Broncos went out and fired their special teams coordinator. Ben Kotwica was fired after 2 seasons, and this is wild on a number of fronts that we know. Special teams really was the most gut-wrenching moment of the year when the Denver Broncos had that field goal blocked. And you remember, Sean Payton had a very, very close friend who he'd coached with for a ton of years in Mike Westhoff, who was truly a special teams coordinator. But because we have the richest owner in sports, his title was assistant head coach, but he really oversaw special teams. Less than 24 hours after that blocked field goal, he has these vision problems and retires. There's always been like a lot of questions stirring about Broncos country. Like, did he really retire because of vision issues? And kind of crazy that happens right after one of the most gut-wrenching special team moments of all time. But he did retire after that. So now the Denver Broncos just had one dude running special teams now that Westhoff was out, and that was indeed Ben Kotwica, and the Broncos fired him. A lot of conspiracy theories about that. The first big thing that I've got to just point out here is, like, this is the unit to me that I was insanely impressed. There were very few moments outside of that blocked kick where I was like, oh, special teams let us down. If anything, this has been like a shining exemplar. Like 2 years in a row, one of our very few Pro Bowl players has been Marvin Mims, who is a standout on the special teams unit. Like, I feel like, we look at that Seattle Seahawks game early in the season. We got 2 safeties because our kicker was just like kicking bombs out there. So our special teams unit has come such a long, long way that I think this is evidence that Sean Payton does not want to settle, and he is looking to improve and kick down doors and not just squeak into the playoffs. And when he sees a chance to massively make a leap forward, he wants to do that. So we just take a look here at how good this Broncos special teams has been, and it has been extremely special that we're in the top 10 when it came to our punt return average, our kickoff return average, our punt return average against us. So we're returning it further, and we're letting them return it not as far on us. Like, it's a huge, huge thing. You take a look at Will Lutz, our kicker, was the AFC Special Teams Player of the Year multiple times throughout this tenure. So he 3 times. Over his 2 seasons, he was the best special teams player in the entire AFC. And so I think this was a unit that really outkicked its coverage, which is a funny pun to use for a special teams unit. But man, I've been impressed with this. And so to me, this is an amazing sign that Sean Payton is not settling and has big, big plans for it. So the 2 leaders in the clubhouse to replace him, and let me know which of these would excite you more. First leader in the clubhouse would be a Sean Payton dude through and through. Actually, both of these leaders in the clubhouse are Sean Payton dudes. First one is Chris Banjo. Cool thing about Chris Banjo is that he actually interviewed for a massive jump up to go and take over the unit in San Francisco and become their special teams coordinator. And special teams probably cost the San Francisco 49ers a trip to the playoffs this year. Just absolutely abysmal special teams play there. So did Sean Payton make this firing because he knows, like, hey, I need a spot for Chris Banjo. He coached him when he was a player and wants to find a way to keep him on the squad here. Special teams, I think, is like the craziest, hardest unit to coach in the NFL because you truly are coaching a bunch of dudes who were the best player in the history of their entire high school. So think of your history of your high school, the best player ever, who was the man, like walked around like those big old shoulders and threw you into lockers like happened to me. He might be good enough to play on an NFL special teams unit. And that seems like a step down for him. And so the egos that you have to have in check, because it's like, it's been these big fish in these little ponds in the best player in their high school, maybe probably one of the best players in their college, and they're lucky enough to scoot on to a special teams unit, and they're like, wait, I was a starting quarterback at my high school, and now you get thrown on as a gunner on a special teams unit. And so to be able to have that ability to motivate a bunch of big dogs and get them to go out and do something that doesn't even seem like football to some like true football fans, right? Like, that's a hard thing to do. You have to be a very special personality. And so maybe Sean Payton just says, hey, Chris Banjo is him, and I'm not going to lose him to the San Francisco 49ers. The other leader in the clubhouse for this role is indeed another former Sean Payton guy. We have that United direct flight from New Orleans to Denver, and pushing back on all those narratives that nobody wants to work with Sean Payton. Everybody who's worked with Sean Payton wants to continue to work with him. And Darren Rizzi was a special teams coordinator for the New Orleans Saints. You might recognize that name because after they fired their coach, Darren Rizzi actually sneaked out a bunch of wins there for the New Orleans Saints and was their interim head coach. He has shown just a tremendous ability to get a ton out of teams. He's had a top 5 special teams unit in a ton of times in his time in New Orleans. 12 out of the 13 years that he has been the New Orleans Saints special teams coordinator, they've had a top 10 special teams unit. So that's a fantastic stat right there. On top of that, each year they put out the NFLPA survey, which I look forward to looking at this year, where players get to say who they like playing for, and he's a top 5 special teams coordinator, meaning players love to play for him, and he gets the most out of his squads. So that's the type of dude that you want. So of those two, if it is going to be one of those guys, first off, do you think it was the right move to move on from our special teams coordinator? I think one of the crazy advantages that we have here is that hopefully we have some continuity over years, and that we know it takes a couple years for these systems to get ingrained, and hopefully you just keep seeing them step up and step up. So now having a new coordinator in there could disrupt that. And I think that was a great unit for us, and I'm a little disappointed that we let it go. But is Chris Banjo a better option, or is Darren Rizzi a better option? My kids tell me now that Riz is a cool thing, Skibbity Riz. I don't even know what it means, but we could have a dude in our locker room named Riz, and maybe that's just going to bring all the Riz back to Denver. So let me know, would you rather have Banjo? Would you rather have Darren Rizzi as our new special teams coordinator? And do you feel like it's a sign that Sean Payton isn't settling moving forward? Next thing that also really cool here to see, I love Sire Bettinger, what he does at Locked On, what he does at Predominantly Orange, and he was on the fact that it wasn't just the blocked field goal that maybe doomed our special teams coordinator, that over that stretch there when we had 4 or 3 games to win 1, our special teams unit was very much lacking. And it was Riley Moss had been having the season of his life. And over that course of playing the Chargers and then playing the Cincinnati Bengals and then playing the Chiefs, man, his punts were horrendous. And so maybe Sean Payton was seeing something there. Maybe it was the missed kick at the end of the half to go in Buffalo that would have tied us at 10-10 with the Buffalo Bills, that Sean Payton's that's the last straw. I want to bring in one of my guys here in Banjo or Rizzi, but that's going to be interesting to watch. Last thing, as I hear a ton of people talk about the fact that could the Denver Broncos go out and get a top flight wide receiver to come here, and the leader of the clubhouse is T. Higgins. Now, Higgins has playing for the Bengals, has really had a pretty on-again, off-again season with injuries. And if you the psyche of a pro player, when you hear Alex Singleton talk about how an injury weighs in the back of your mind, and you would just, Alex Singleton said it's the worst year of his entire life being injured, and it messes with your psyche. So T. Higgins being having that in the back of his mind, hey, I haven't been able to even play in half of these games. I want a team that takes care of my body and make sure that I'm on the field and can play, because it messes with you. It weighs on you. And so I saw this stat that Andrew Mason put this quote out from Sean Payton, and I thought it was a wild advantage that we're going to have. So not only could T. Higgins come and play with a quarterback and a coach who are on the same page in Bo Nix and Sean Payton, whereas if he goes and chooses the Patriots, and that's the leader in the clubhouse, it's a brand new coach and a brand new quarterback. They haven't even gelled yet. You don't have the results on the field. You don't have an offensive line. You can give Drake May the time to give it to you. So not only can T. Higgins come and play with a coach and a quarterback and the best fans in football and a state that has 300 days of sun and be tied to the richest owner in sports, the other thing is the best ability is availability. And you look at 2 years ago, the Denver Broncos had players miss 134 games to injury, and 2 seasons in a row, the Denver Broncos have had players miss 30 games towards injury. So some of those are flukes, and I should knock on wood because I don't want Pat Surtain to tear his ACL in training camp this year. But I think when T. Higgins is looking at where to go, why not go to a team that you know is going to prioritize your physical health? And that's something to Bo-LIEVE in.